Here we are just past the bottom of the hour. I'm Brooke Baldwin, and we ought to know by now, but when politics, guns, and the Second Amendment all meet, to paraphrase journalist Hunter S. Thompson, things get strange, and maybe none stranger than what just happened in Democrat-leaning Colorado, where voters have ousted the Democratic head of the state Senate, that's him on the right, and a second Senate Democrat from a heavily Democratic district because they helped pass some fairly modest firearms restrictions. But that in and of itself isn't even as big a deal when you consider that one of the two races was a war by proxy between gun control advocate Michael Bloomberg, the billionaire mayor from New York, and a Pueblo plumber by the name of Victor Head. He is a political novice and a gun rights supporter with no real money to speak of here. And you know the end of the story here. The plumber won. How? By organizing this recall election that toppled State Senator Angela Giron, despite the fact that Bloomberg's group spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on Giron's behalf. So Angela Giron joins me now from Colorado Springs. And Ms. Giron, 2 days after this surprise defeat, we have you here. You were considered this, heavy favorite. Yesterday, you were quoted as saying that you weren't sure quite what had happened. Have you figured that out yet?
Well, yeah, and I think that was really a misquote in that we know what really happened here. I mean, yes, we had a strong NRA, and you have a person like Mr. Head, but really what this story really is about, it's about voter suppression. When Colorado has voted by mail, 70% of Coloradans vote by mail. And we didn't have access to that mail ballot. I mean, I was at doors.
Okay, forgive me, but I'm going to cut you off right there, because if we talk voter suppression, I've read reports of lack of popularity on your behalf. Let's just not go there. Let's get to the meat of the story, which is this gun control stance that you and your let's talk though about the stance that you and your colleague, the head of the Senate, a former police officer, have taken. And here you have mega cash from Mayors Against Illegal Guns, Mayor Bloomberg, versus this grassroots effort. What happened?
I'm telling you what happened is that you had only 30,000 of the voters who in the last election, off-year election, was 45,000. And so the people that are in support of very common sense gun legislation weren't able to get to the polls. They vote by ballot, and they have been doing that for 25 years. I mean, we have to call it for what it is. When I was talking to people at the doors and in their homes, it was that, oh, this is what this is about, because you want universal background checks and you voted for that, and because you're limiting magazines to 15. I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't see that that is any infringement on the Second Amendment. So people didn't know what it was about. There was voter confusion. We didn't even know what the rules of the game were. This is the United States of America. We didn't know what the rules of the game were a week out from the election. Where to vote, how to vote, were you going to get a ballot in the mail? And so it was just that confusion led to the voices of people in Pueblo County and El Paso County not having their voices heard, and yet they're going to have to pay for this election, the most expensive in the history of these two counties.
I understand that that is one side of this. The other side is the Republican who you lost to. Let's hear from him and some of his supporters.
Politicians can and should be held accountable when they vote to infringe on our rights as citizens.
That the people will not go against the Constitution or our Second Amendment rights.
I still just want to be able to give my girlfriend my shotgun that sits in my closet. So that's been it from the start.
So the last guy there, this is Victor Head, this political novice who organized this recall against you. I know you want to talk about, and I hear you on voter suppression, but do you believe, Ms. Giron, that gun control supporters in other states could fall prey to these grassroots insurgencies like the one that this guy Victor Head mounted in your state?
Well, I don't think certainly in Colorado because
but in other states.
We just passed the... In other states, it depends on what their voter turnout is, because that's what happened here. And if
you believe this is all voter turnout, forgive me for interrupting. I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, it's about having the voices of the people being represented, heard. So if it's, this would be a different story, and I will tell you, it would be a very different story. The results would have been different if people would have been able to vote like they have voted for the last 25 years. So for other legislators across the country, I don't believe that they're going to have any fear about doing the right thing, whether it's on gun legislation, gun safety legislation, or anything else that's important to their constituency, because hopefully in their states they'll have voter access. I mean, and that's what, in Colorado, we did some major changes.
How about
and
this?
That we really
Let me jump in. Two sides of this conversation here, and in retrospect, do you think that your association with Mayor Michael Bloomberg and his money, his out-of-state money, might have tainted you among your constituents, among those who voted against you?
Oh, those people would have voted against me no matter what. They didn't vote for me in 2010 when I ran my first election, and they wouldn't vote for me if I would have had my regular election in 2014. So that's just a group of people that don't have the same values as myself and the rest of, and the majority, I would say, of people in Pueblo County, which is the district I represent.
Quickly, since you were up in 2014, this guy won't be in for very long. Are you throwing your hat back in the ring down the road?
I'm just, we're looking at, just a lot of options, and so I haven't made any decisions on that. Again, this is really new. We worked really hard. We certainly found a tremendous amount of supporters and identified those, and so there are some, people have to look at some of the things that we look at ourselves and say, what happened here. But I'll tell you, in the analysis that we've already looked at now, it's about the high percentage of people who vote by mail who didn't have that option here. And I talked to people that were just coming out of the hospital, people were going into the hospital, people who had were in wheelchairs, that none of them had the opportunity to get to the polling centers.
Okay. Angela Giron.
And that's a sad day.
Thank you.